is like, people thinking we're trying to be, I don't know what they thought we were trying to be, but, wasn't accepting it at first, but, it's like, it's not going to be denied. You're not going to tell me what I'm going to wear. You're not going to tell me what I'm going to do. You don't
Right.
know me. And I'm not that guy that you might think I am. So you step up on me, you
Right.
might get, it might be a whole different situation. So anyway,
Hello, my name is Lorelei McBroom. I have done vocals for Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones, Nile Rodgers, Lou Reed, and Rod Stewart. I created Who Influenced You to chronicle a genealogy of inspiration from one generation to the next. We will cover all fields of interest, from sports to science, art to fashion, music to drama. Who influenced you? He worked with Prince. As a band member and songwriter, he worked with Jody Watley, producing and writing. He produced and wrote for Adam Ant, Tom Jones, Tina Turner. You name it, he did it. Andre Cymone. Hi, Andre.
uh,
This is such a pleasure for me. You have no idea how much the music that you are part of creating affected me.
thank you so much. And I want to say thank you for having me. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Um, I would say we're from the same generation. And to me, what was so important in my 20s was establishing who I am as a person and kind of getting in touch with myself as a young woman. And the stuff you guys were writing, the way you guys were dressing, the whole vibe was so different than the standard traditional like R&B artist, what you kind of expected out of Black artists at that time. And that was very exciting to me. For people that may not know who you are and what you've done, that you were one of the people that started with Prince. You were in his earlier bands. You worked with him through the Dirty Mind album, which was my absolute favorite. That like freaked me out. I just loved it. Um, and so there's no question that Prince and his band members had an image that was anything but the traditional R&B, which kind of came out of the Motown 60s era, a little part of the 50s too, where bands were dressing in suits. The idea was to have a look that was respectable as Black people. The girl groups, from the Supremes to the Martha and the Vandellas, they dressed elegantly, and that was really important at that time. But as we went through the 70s and people got a little bit funkier and people were wearing their afros and being a little bit more Afrocentric, some of them, things started to change. But by the time we got to the 80s, with the significance of MTV and being on video, so it wasn't just about how good you sounded on the radio and on an occasional appearance on a TV show like Soul Train or American Bandstand. It was about creating an entire look for the decade, which was driven by Madonna, Michael, Prince, Cyndi Lauper, Billy Idol, and so there were very few Black people in that period that were allowed to have that crossover look, that crossover appeal. I mean, the whole idea of crossing over is something that I don't think a lot of people understand what that was about. If you were Black, you were expected to do Black music and make it on Black radio. If you were able to cross over where you were on pop radio, which meant literally pop radio means popular, but it was looked at as what the white audience is going to listen to. That was a whole nother battle. So please tell me what that was like and how you guys decided we're going to go for something that's completely against the norm.
Well, a couple of things. I mean, because I'll deal with it from Prince perspective and then my own experience as a solo artist. But from Prince's perspective, in the early days, first of all, we Prince and I go way back we started off together, literally our first bands. I got the guy's first guitar. A lot of people don't know that. So there's a lot of, real history as far as that's concerned. And then we, obviously came to live with my family, and, we really, we were like brothers, literally.
Mhm. So he
Yeah,
lived with your family, right?
yeah. There's a picture, and I'll send it to you so you can see, how dynamic. Because the thing is, my mother was like pillar of the community. She was like, she was basically everybody's mom. But she, you know, um, had her first child at like 15, and I was the youngest of six. So she, won her family as a, because of what she had done, as a Black woman in the community. And she came and rose from basically from nothing to become a prominent citizen. She was awarded Family of the Year because she had, she'd taken in, um, you know, Prince. My brothers were, they had a very sort of checkered past, so she overcame a lot of that. And obviously they came and took a picture of our family. And at the time, Prince was part of our family. And,
Mhm.
until he, was able to afford to get on his own. I say all that to say, fashion, from that standpoint, we were able to see a lot of groups, we're exposed to a lot of groups. And we could see, the changing dynamic in fashion. And my sister, who was a fashion designer and studied in Europe, she was very much an integral part of, helping us, guiding us. I mean, she made a lot of clothes for me at the time when I was a teenager, but
Mhm.
also became, seamstress for us. She made Prince's trench coats and, vanities, camisoles, and the time suits and all that kind of stuff. So, our family was very much a part of all of that. So fashion was a thing, just innately in our reality. We really wanted to set ourselves apart, and we were very adamant about creating our own identities. Prince and his vibe, and definitely me and mine. For my thing, I ended up sort of with the clear pants thing, because I thought, what, nobody would think about doing this. And I found them somewhere. New York. It was right around the corner. It was not far from Trash in Ballville. And I may have gotten it from there. I may have gotten a pair of them from there, and then I got them in Washington D.C. I found another pair and got them, and everywhere I could find them. Then here in L.A. I found some, and so everywhere I get them, I buy them, because the interesting thing is, as um, as we started gaining in sort of popularity, and then we changed management, and when Prince changed management, they didn't want me they didn't want me to wear clear pants anymore. They didn't really want me to be, as out front anymore, because they wanted to really kind of push him more in as a, a solo, not a band kind of thing, more of a solo kind of thing. So they started trying to tell me what to wear, and I told them, basically go to hell. And want to play bass, then you can do this. And they didn't like that. And so we had it out, because I'm not, as an artist, because I like to think of myself as an artist, you don't tell artists what to do. And I wasn't, I was Prince's friend. I wasn't his band member. I wasn't there because I was like, oh, I want to be in, I want to be in this band. No, we were in bands before any of those people were ever around. And Prince knew me, and he knew how I could be.
Mhm.
But my stuff kept coming up missing. It's like, my suitcases, we'd get to a town and all my stuff, so they started playing that kind of stuff. But
Wow.
anyway, that's how the fashion thing kind of got, kind of where it was. And then me and Prince were always competitive. So it was like, who could you know, funk dress the other one.
Well, it's interesting to me because in my perception as a woman, your image was very masculine and very sexy. Prince's image was more androgynous, which could definitely be sexy too, but he had this other thing. I don't know if it was because he was wearing the heels or because of, occasional makeup, or just his vibe was just really androgynous. So and then the other guys, they were pretty masculine to me. It was him that had this, I don't know what you're into kind of look. And I find it interesting in hearing that, he grew up in a pretty religious background, where all this sex stuff came from, given that, that wasn't what he was raised on.
Yeah, well, like I said, he came and lived with our family for, I don't know, maybe 6 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
My family is very different. um, and him and my brother became really, really tight. My brother would bring books. Like if you said, look, I'm interested in being a rock star, or I'm interested in being a filmmaker, or I'm interested in art. When you woke up the next morning, my brother would have like 10 books,
Mm-hmm.
And he might be smoking a joint and he'd tell you about every one of those books and why you should read them. So, in certain cases of entertainment, it's like, he would talk about Mick Jagger and the whole androgynous effect, or David Bowie and the whole
Right.
androgynous, what that, can do, and the impact of that societally. So it's like, you knew. It was like, as teenagers, we were getting an education,
Right.
and so it had nothing to do with, because you're right about, his family, but, formative years pretty much spent, with my family. Is before that was different. And I knew his father really, really well. In fact, our fathers were in a band together. And his father was very religious. His mom, not so much that I know of. My experience with her was perhaps maybe she wasn't, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think she really cared much for me. But yeah, I think as far as that's concerned, he was a little more androgynous, and specifically and purposefully, so me, I just, that was a different thing, and that wasn't really my thing. My thing was just to really have fun, and to just be unique and different, and to make a statement. And I didn't, Prince was more of a studier of other artists and things like that. Black folks are very diverse, and
Right.
you wouldn't, if you tuned into regular television or any of the cable outlets, you wouldn't know how diverse, and it's beautiful. I mean, it is absolutely beautiful. All the different nuances of what Black expression actually is,
Right.
and so people are missing out because I mean, you have to just step back and remind people, okay, Black people created rock and roll. Okay, Black people created jazz,
Right.
funk.
Right.
I mean, fashion statements that everybody goes, all the different the vernacular that people try to use now, and high-fiving and everything else, all the things that make America this kind of character-driven, fun, eclectic, diverse kind of thing. Black people have a stamp on all of that, but know that again, because people keep trying to use us as sort of just that, that friend that, over there. I live for the day when we really have, the kind of equality and representation, that we really deserve, as a diverse culture that we are. I mean, you think about when you're talking about, the early days and the things that, how we dressed in our band and all that kind of stuff. And, I mean, so we didn't have the kind of inhibitions. And believe me, it was an uphill fight, with, trying to, and sometimes with our own people, is like, people thinking we're trying to be, I don't know what they thought we were trying to be, but, wasn't accepting it at first, but, it's like, it's not going to be denied. You're not going to tell me what I'm going to wear. You're not going to tell me what I'm going to do. You don't know me, and I'm not that guy that you might think I am. So you step up on me, you might get, it might be a whole different situation. So anyway,
I'd like to talk about some of the more recent stuff you've been doing as a solo artist. I watched your video, Black Man in America, and I thought it was absolutely incredible.
You can never hide the past, not if you really want to understand the present.
Land. Brothers get shot, no hesitation. A way of life for a generation. Yes, it's all true. You don't understand. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And if I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. We've been struggling 50 years, sacrificed through blood and tears, just trying to break through to this here promised land. You don't know what it's like to be a black man in America. You don't know what it's like to be a black man in America.
Tell me how that came about.
I'm a black man in America. Consistently experiencing, the same things that, young black men are dealing with. I have nephews and cousins, and I have a big family. And so many things have happened that are really, tragedies. My nephew, he just passed away. He's younger than I am. But he got beat up by the police really bad, jail. And I think they broke his back, and, just a lot of crazy stuff. And, he never really quite recovered from that. They arrested him when he was like 8 years old, him and my other nephew. So it's just, my older brother always had altercations with the police. So, I saw it firsthand. I got arrested, actually Prince was on the back of my motorcycle when I got arrested by the police one time. And so they took me to jail, and he had to, my mom to bail me out. So I've always had, I've had other friends that had crazy experiences with police, and even, Dante Wright, he got murdered by a police officer who just got off. Basically, they gave her some soft time and then let her out. But he was right near where my oldest son lives, same neighborhood. And my oldest son basically looks like Dante Wright. He could, so it all that stuff hits home for me, so I felt it really, really, necessary to write that song. And, Trayvon, I wrote a song about Trayvon Martin. I wrote a hot night in the neighborhood after Michael Brown was murdered. So I felt, really, Black Man American, Black Lives Matter. I felt like, as artists, you got to use your platform. I always think, and I said it then, I didn't really deal with Twitter and, social media a whole lot, because that's a whole nother, a lot of Black athletes, artists, and people in positions of power, who basically have a much larger platform than me. And I was like, and so I started, calling folks, look, you got a platform, use it. You got to speak on this stuff. If I were in your position, I would be, they'd probably shut me down, which is, a whole nother thing, but you got to use it. But Black Man in America kind of came from all of that. That when you're a Black man in America and you're kind of placed in the situation that Black people, period, but Black men in particular are put in, you only have so many options, because as it is, Section 8, redlining and all the different things that they do to corral you into this one area.
Right.
And then police are really there to just pin you in. So if you come out of there, basically you're going to get harassed by the police. That's the gig. People need to realize that, because a lot of people somehow have these blinders, like they don't understand what's really going on. Police aren't really there for us. The police are to keep us from, intermingling with the rest of the world, so. And at least that's my opinion. And that was definitely my opinion growing up in North Minneapolis.
Right. Right. Well, certainly I can understand what you mean. I'll never forget the first time my son, who's now almost 30, but when he was about 12, he came home really scared. He said, "Mom, I don't understand what's going on. I was walking home and I saw this boy. He was about 16. He wasn't doing anything. He wasn't hurting anybody. And the police threw him up against the wall and started asking him all these questions. What is that about?" And that was the first time that we had the talk, when I had to explain to him about how to behave around police. And at that time in New York, they had stop and frisk, and that's what that was about. But he was terrified. And then I heard from other older men, stopped at 7, 8 years old, again, for no good reason. They were just out playing with their friends, having to put their hands on top of the police car that was boiling hot, burning themselves, but the police told them don't move, and how frightening that was. And I think that unless you actually see it yourself or hear it from someone that you know and trust, people are not exposed, especially white people, unless they live around other Black people where they can either see it themselves or they hear the stories, or they may be out with somebody who's being treated completely wrong. I mean, like in that video, the Chris Rock video, How to Not Get Stopped by the Police.
People in the Black community, myself, often worry that we might be a victim of police brutality. So, as a public service, the Chris Rock Show proudly presents this educational video. If you jump a subway turnstile, you might just get off with a warning from the police. But if you jump a turnstile carrying a loaded gun and smoking a joint, then maybe you need your ass kicked. Here's a no-brainer. If you're listening to loud rap music, turn that shit off. Blasting "fuck the police" while you're getting pulled over by the police is just ignorant. When an officer approaches your car, be polite.
Is there a problem, officer?
And stay in your car with your hands on the wheel.
What the fuck you want, motherfucker?
Unless you want your ass kicked. If you have to give a friend a ride, get a white friend. A white friend can be the difference between a ticket and a bullet in the ass.
Because that's reality.
In my experience, because I've had an interesting life. I mean, just in I guess the trajectory of coming from the projects, because the projects was an interesting experience just in and of itself back in the 60s, because you're dealing with people from every culture. Like when you say, projects, I'm realizing it was probably a project, like a science project, basically. Let's see what it's like in the 60s, because this was before, integration and all that kind of stuff actually kicked in or was, passed, so let's see, let's put Black folks, white folks, Native Americans, Hispanics all together and see if they kill each other. And nobody killed anybody. And, and it was actually really, really a beautiful experience. I mean, one of my best friends, because I had no concept, my parents didn't, at that time, teach me, what, you gotta, be afraid of this guy, or you gotta only hang out with these people. It was nothing, none of that conversation didn't take place.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of my best friends at the time was this kid named Barry Greenwood, Jewish kid, one of my brother's best friends was, I think his name was Larry Watley, white guy, they used to go hunting and fishing together. I mean, it just was not like that at all until, I had an experience where in Minneapolis, you have a parade that would happen. White folks would pay Black folks to go have your own parade somewhere else, and so they basically buy you off and have you go away and be out of sight, basically. And so, but it was a celebration, which was great. It was all good, and I loved it, because, you'd have, people from my community, people that I knew, actually playing in the band and marching and stuff like that. And as a kid, I loved it, and I would march along with them with my little, cardboard box, beating the heart out, pretending I was a part of that whole thing. The only problem was when I got back to our, project unit, the white folks, the white guy that lived next to me called me a nigger and told me to beat my box somewhere back in Africa, but his problem was that my brother heard him. My older brother heard him and beat the living shit out of him.
Yeah.
But the problem then was that my brother had to, they had to, because then it was an issue. So they had to get him out of town and out and, and all kinds of other crazy stuff.
Right. It's interesting to me that one of the reasons I love living in New York is because it truly is a melting pot from all different cultures. I mean, I'm from Los Angeles, so we were a little bit more isolated because people are in their cars. But here, we've got the Chinese community, Japanese community, African community, Russian community, the Jewish community, Black community, and obviously there are white people here. It's like everybody is here. And there are certainly exceptions when there's been like race-related crimes, but generally speaking, those are not common. People are able to respect that they have different cultures, and we allow for that and get on with it. We work our jobs and we have coworkers that are from different cultures and so forth. So when I'm in other parts of the country where they may not be as well integrated or as exposed, and where possibly the news they're listening to is constantly feeding them with be afraid of the other. This guy's different than you. This guy's, God is different than yours. This guy's sexual orientation is different, and constantly fear, fear, fear. And I find that tends to be the biggest difference between, us, quote, coastal elites and the rest of the country, is that we've been exposed much more in our daily lives to each other as, as far as who, quote, the other is. And it's not a big thing.
It's not, but you hit on something that's so part of the problem, is that, the media. And I don't want to get too, political or anything, but the media, is a corporation. It's corporate media is what it is. And they pick and choose what goes out to the masses. And especially at this point in time, because, every outlet, every platform is a corporate platform. All these social media platforms are all corporations. So they get to pick and choose, what messages get sent, what images, how culture is portrayed, period. Now that's crazy. That's insane, because, if they decide that what you're saying doesn't fit with their vision of America, how they want it to be.
Right.
Nobody's going to see that. And what they're going to see is, whatever they want to show.